Good morning, student and market research professional. Today I am going to take you through the application of multidimensional scaling in marketing research, right? It is popularly used for the brand positioning. So let us do today's presentation. I'll be discussing about the brief of multidimensional scaling and special I'll be using for the brand positioning. So I'll be mainly discussing about the few statistics associated with MDS. Then I'll be discussing about how the data can be captured and how to select particular procedures. And finally, I'll be explaining the today's class with one example, popular TV brands using SPSS. So what is multidimensional scaling? Because it's a class of procedure for representing the perception and preference of respondent, especially by means of visual display. So you can see the number of brands we can give. So we can present how the number of brands can be positioned in a visual maps using the price versus quality. The example I mentioned, the cold drinks, we can put these brands in terms of taste, price or flavors. Okay. Now when we consider the brand, it could be used for brand positioning. You can do the MDS for the current brands, and it could be the ideal brands, like in terms of price versus feature. I can compare one brand with the other. So that's why the MDS is a very suitable procedure. So for running the MDS, what we need to have, that we need to have a certain basic statistics knowledge. So first is we need to look at the similarity judgment. Similarity judgments are the rating of all possible pair of brands or stimuli in terms of their similarity using Likert scale. And sometimes we use to capture the brands comparison with the preference. So we can tell that 10 brands are given, which is the most preferred brand, which is the least preferred brand. But when we run the MDS, we do it, we see that how the model based on that MDS, we look at the two, what is the lack of fit measure. This is the stress value should be less than 10%, and R square is a squared correlation index that indicates the proportion of variance of optimally scaled data that can be accounted for the MDS procedures, like it should be more than 0.6. We'll see both. And then spatial maps, when you get the various dimension, right? One dimension, two dimension, three dimension. Based on two dimension, based on three dimension, we can put the brand. That graphical presentation we call the spatial maps. And coordinates, we can name the coordinates, like coordinate X could be value for money and coordinate Y could be after sales service. Okay, now how to get the input data? One is called the perception base, where the direct method, in perception base there are direct and derived. In the direct method, we can ask them, can you compare brand A with the rest of the brands? So if we take the 10 toothpaste brand, I can ask them, can you compare Colgate with the rest of the 9 brands? And derived is basically, I ask the same question, can you compare Colgate with the rest of the 9 brands in terms of cavity protection or teeth whitening? Right? So it's a attributes is given by the researcher. Now when it comes to the preference, I can ask the same question, like you have 10 brands, can you rate which is the most preferred, which is the least preferred? Okay, so this is the same thing, like based your own brand. So I have considered 10 toothpaste brand, and this is very similar to dissimilar, so I use the this comparison, right? So this is the tables, you can get it. So there are 10 brands there across row, across columns. So you can get the 10 into 10 minus 1 divided by 2, 45 comparison. It's a square matrix, square symmetric matrix. So diagonal matrix would be 0 and upper half and lower half value would be same. So how do you select that particular procedure? So for our case, since we are comparing one brand to another brand, right? So it's a ordinal data we used. But if you like to measure with respect to certain attributes, like a case example of like a toothpaste, in that case you can say cavity protection. One measure, you can measure that particular brand, set of brand in terms of cavity protection. Can you rate it 1 to 5, right? So how do you decide the number of dimensions? Sometimes use your prior knowledge, like your market research knowledge. Sometimes you it is easy to interpret two, that's why we select the 2 dimension rather than 3 or 4 dimension. We use the elbow criteria, like stress value, that the goodness, Now badness of fit, right, it should be less than 10. We see that at that less than 10 value, what it is indicating the number of dimension. And finally ease of use. So we can see it here that the stress value less than 10, at that level the number of dimension is 2. We can go for 3 and 4, but interpretation would be difficult. Now this is the again same example, that 10 toothpaste brands we put in this, the dimension we can name based on our market researcher decision, right? So this is our example that we like to show you. And here the popular TV brands, 8 brands, so it is are putting it across row and column. So these are the diagonal elements are 0, right, but rest of the symmetric axis. So how it looks like, so I will go to the SPSS after this. Okay, so let us start the process on the SPSS. So I am on SPSS, right? So this is my data set. Again, 8 brands are there, popular TV brands. You see the diagonal matrix are elements are 0, but this is symmetric, lower half and upper half. To conduct the SPSS, what I need to do, I go to the analyze, then I go to the scale, and then my multidimensional scaling. I go to this multidimensional scaling. You see the variables are mentioned over here, right? So I can select that what is the shape is the square symmetric. Okay, I go to the square symmetric, and now I go to the options. I like to put the individual subject plot, and finally I like to go for the model is ordinal data. Since the one brand is compared with the another brand, so it's ordinal, not interval and ratio. Now number of dimension, it could be 1 to 3 or maybe 1 to 2, it's up to you, but mostly you put 1 to 3. Okay, so once I put this, then I press OK. Now my setup is ready to run. So let us see how we can interpret the results. So yes, now this is the stress 3-dimension solution. Okay, it is showing, and the 3-dimension solution iteration 8 completed, it achieved the 0.001. But most important thing is the stress value. This is a badness factor, bad factor, so it should be lower than 10%. What you see it here, 0.052, and R square factor is 0.96, means 96% explanation done in this 3-dimension solution. But when I go to this coordinates, you can see the coordinate, this will be used to plot the 3-dimensional plots. Okay, now when it comes to the 2-dimension solution, in the 2-dimension solution, again you can see the stress value is 0.24, means 24%. Too bad, it is more than 10%. And RSQ is also, R square value reduced from 96 to 0.58, means 58%. So either solution is not that much good. So these are the coordinates for the 8 brands to plot 2-dimensional plots. So let us see our 1-dimension plot. And 1-dimension plot is, you can see it here, 1-dimension plot. And 1-dimension plot is basically stress value is very high, 0.43, and R square value is 0.35. So R square value in 3-dimension 96%, it get reduced to 35% in case of a 1-dimension solution. So it is quite clear that 3-dimension solution is not really 1-dimension solution is not really good, rather 3-dimension solution is good. But for our interpretation, let us see which curve we can, which graph we can. This is the spatial maps. It is very difficult to explain there, like how this, but if you look at the 2-dimension plot, right, this is the 2-dimension plot. You can see it here, dimension 1 versus dimension 2. What you can see it here, maybe in terms of after sale service 1 plus, you can name the dimension Samsung, and 1 plus may be very good. So in terms of maybe picture quality, you can give the Onida and Sony's this. So it is up to you how you can name the dimension, right? And you can see the LG is a bit distant from the other groups, and TCL is another brands, right? So you can have a very basic understanding how, and on the top of it you can put the attributes, but we are not considering attribute at this point of time. So multidimensional scaling, we can see that how brands are positioned in terms of particular dimension, and where someone is very in close competition. OnePlus and Samsung, they're in close competition. Onida and Sony is close competition in terms of maybe certain feature, maybe it's picture quality, but in terms of after sale service, that Samsung and OnePlus in the close competition. So you need to identify the insight, bring out the insight based on the analysis. So I come back to my presentation. Here I give certain name, like I give the dimension budget friendly versus extended warranty versus perception of brand. So it is up to you how you can give this. So when we have the two dimension solution, you can give picture quality and maybe gaming features. So which dimension give, it is up to you and based on your market research knowledge. But dimension one is not really very much insightful, and in our case it is not really very much useful. Dimension 3 is more useful, but we can take either dimension 1 and dimension 3 or dimension 2. Thank you for your time, and hope to see you in another video. Thank you.